Death Knights have always been an intriguing class. From my days of playing EverQuest as a kid through to World of Warcraft, there are so many ways this class can be envisioned. In this video today, we're going to go over my build for a Death Knight in Baldur's Gate 3, utilizing both the Paladin and the Warlock, the dreaded Lockadin build. I suppose it's more of a Dark Knight, since we won't be hinging on summoning undead due to the nature of how Aura of Hate works. We'll be more controlling them. If you'd like to see an undead summoning melee hybrid build, let me know below. But if this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things here is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos so you can decide if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, we'll be starting out as a Paladin until level 2. Then we'll transition to Warlock with the Great Old One subclass and Pact of the Blade for 5 levels. This will give us plenty of Eldritch Invocations as well as an extra attack. And finally we'll jump back into Paladin for 5 more levels. And then at the end we'll decide if we want to spend our last 2 levels in Paladin or Warlock, depending on the focus you have for your character. And that's really the gist of this entire video. And if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down and get back to spelunking in the lower city. Before you head out though, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. I currently have 89% unsubscribed viewership on the channel, and that's a metric I'm trying to change this year, so every little bit helps. You can jump ahead to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. And if you need help with any other subject in Baldur's Gate 3, check out my playlist linked below and at the end of the video. But let's get started here on the best Death Knight build for Baldur's Gate 3. Loading into the game, let's take a look at character creation for this class. Now you can go with any race that makes sense for you. I'm going to be selecting Tiefling in this example here because I like the Zariel Tiefling in specific. The cantrips that you'll get access to are pretty cool. You'll get Searing Smite and Branding Smite, which you'll already get as the Paladin, but it's nice just to be able to kind of remove those. You always have them as cantrips, which is really cool. But some other good things, of course, you can go with any of the elves. Half-Orc is actually really good here because of Savage Attack. When you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you deal an extra dice of weapon damage. You'll be doing quite a bit of critting, especially with how Smite works and the reactions bound to it. So having Savage Attacks online is really nice. And also just Relentless Endurance so that you can kind of stay active. So whenever you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming down, which is really cool. Humans, though, are always just a really good one, too, for human versatility, getting additional skill and proficiency, as well as getting a 25% increase in your carry capacity is just always generally nice. But go with whatever works for you. A lot of people like Dragonborn Paladins. I myself do as well. Just remember the chromatic ones are the evil ones and the metallic ones are the good ones from what I can remember. Now, as far as our actual... Where's my guy? There he is. As far as our actual class goes, we're going to be going with Paladin first because this gives us access to heavy armor. If we go with Warlock first and then Paladin, we don't get heavy armor, and the whole point and kind of image of this build is all around heavy armor. Now for subclasses too, you can start with whatever you wish. If you don't want to go with Oathbreaker, you can go with, say, Oath of Vengeance. You can go with Oath of the Ancients. You can go with Oath of Devotion. I just don't really like it as much because you don't get... The things that you get for Oath of Devotion as far as your spells are spells you almost always already get, or at least something similar to what you already get. Ancients and Vengeance, I feel, gives you something that is unique to that Paladin that they don't get them otherwise. And I really like Vengeance in general when it comes to mobility and being able to destroy things. Background, choose whatever you wish as always. My always kind of min-max approach here is by Insight and Persuasion from Guild Artisan. It's just nice to kind of have those skills already taken care of so you can spend proficiencies in other points. Now for your abilities, let's go ahead and clear this. And we're going to do this and this. And I'm going to do a contested thing that a lot of people do not usually do. We're going to put points all the way here into Charisma at 17. Because in Act 1, what we're going to do is go and encounter the Hag. And I'm going to not spoil it for you, just encounter the Hag. Go through the whole situation. And if you let her go, then she'll give you her hair. And it gives you a free +1 to any ability. You put it into Charisma and you've got 18 Charisma right at the start of the game, which is really nice because that's going to give you a +4 to your Charisma checks. It's great for your spellcasting abilities as a Paladin and as a Warlock. In addition to that, it's going to help you for all of your conversational skills, right? All of your deception, your intimidation, and your persuasion that you'll be using quite a bit in this game. We're going to bring our wisdom up to 10 so that we don't have to deal with any kind of BS when it comes to hold person or charm person, any of those kind of abilities that remove control. And you can decide if you want to go with a dexterity paladin and focus on finesse weapons or strength. We're going to be going strength in this example here. So we're going to bring this up to 15 and plus 1 to 16. Our constitution we're going to want at 14, and then we're going to hang out right there. And that leaves us with 16 strength and 8 dexterity, but we're not going to stick like that. You can just simply reduce this by 1 point and put the 2 points here and to get 10 dexterity. But this is going to require you to get some way to increase your strength to 16. That's very easily done if you choose Heavy Armor Master as far as a feat, but if you don't want to worry about being reliant upon certain feats to push your strength up to its next portion or its next portion of bonuses, then I would simply put your strength at 14 and put your dexterity here at 12. This gives us plus 1 to our initiative, and yeah, we do get plus 1 to our dexterity saving throws and our AC, but we're using heavy armor, so that doesn't really matter. We're still going to be doing quite a bit of damage with 14 strength, don't you worry about it, and we're doing a majority of our damage using smites, which comes off of our charisma modifier. So smite is going to be doing that damage based off your charisma. Same thing with all of your warlock spells, and when you use pact blade, it's going to be pulling from your charisma to do damage anyway. So don't really worry about your strength being that low. We're going to be doing the damage with our charisma. So these are all of the things you'd set up at character creation. Let's jump now into some progression for this build. Now, before getting into that build, I brought up these two portions of the BG3 wiki to show you guys very quickly. We have the Oathbreaker Paladin, and we have the Necromancy School from the Wizard. And why we're choosing one over the other, or why we're not choosing these two in conjunction, is essentially one thing. Aura of Hate triggers at level 7, and we cannot get the level 6 ability from Necromancy School with the two. Furthermore, Aura of Hate does this. You and any nearby fiends and undead gain additional damage. This does not apply to any undead in which you summon. It's a very weird bug. You will, I don't know if it's a bug, I don't know if it's intended or not, but when you look at the character, you will see, or I'm sorry, any undead you summon, you will see that they have the Aura of Hate on them, but it does not add to their actual damage. But if you control undead using your Channel Oath ability, then you will get the benefit of Aura of Hate. So if you're looking at this build, or you're looking at all these Death Knight builds and wondering why people aren't just going with the Necromancy School, it's mainly because you cannot pull from this Aura of Hate, and the Necromancy ability here that triggers at level 6 is really not going to benefit from it, right? You get all these cool summons, but they're not going to get benefit from your Aura of Hate, which is one of the best things about taking Oathbreaker, because it's just a free bonus to your damage. Look at this. Gain additional damage to melee weapon attacks equal to your charisma modifier. So if our charisma modifier is 18, that's a +4 damage. We're just not getting that outright if we don't pick our Oathbreaker to level 7. So if you're wondering why I'm not taking it, that's why. Again, if you want to see that melee hybrid Necromancer build, leave a comment below. For our progression, we're going to get to level 2, and we're going to select Paladin once more. This is going to give us access to our Divine Smites, which are crucial, and some just basic spells here. This is going to be lovely, awesome, spiffy. And we also want to take advantage of our fighting style. So you can choose between great weapon fighting or dueling. It's one or the other. I mean, you can choose defense or protection too if you want. Dueling implies that you're going to use a sword and a board, or great weapon fighting is going to be just a two-handed weapon. It just depends on how you want to approach it. There are amazing shields that make you particularly better at casting. There are a lot of really awesome two-handed weapons that are just bonkers. So just go with whatever one makes the most sense for you. I'm going to choose great weapon fighting for this video, and we'll progress forward. Now at level 3, we're going to pivot away from Paladin and go into Warlock. And this is going to give us a lot of really fun stuff to do. For cantrips, we're definitely going to go with Eldritch Blast, because we're going to use a bunch of invocations to make that blast badass. And we're going to go with Blade Ward. Take only half the damage from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing attacks, of course. For our subclass, go with whichever one you want. I think the Great Old One is definitely the best of the three when it comes to the features that we're going to be playing around with. Archfey, though, is really good. The Fiend probably being the lesser of the three, but by no means is it bad in any way, shape, or form. And I just mean specifically for the subclass we have in mind here today. So we're going to get 2 spells, of course, Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, as well as Mortal Reminder. When you land a critical hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby enemies must succeed a Wisdom saving throw or become frightened until the end of their next turn. And there's a lot of things you can do to kind of help this out with some items that we'll talk about in the gear section of this portion of this video, but you can have a lot of really cool fun with that. For some spells here, though, you get Tasha's and Dissonant Whispers as part of your pact here with the Great Old One. But Armor of Agathis is just so good. You gain temp 5 hit points and deal 5 cold damage to any creature that hits you with a melee attack. You're going to be just using this so much. And the nice thing too is about this is lasts until long rest, and it's not a concentration ability. You can just have it active. And I really like Arms of Hadar as well, because this is just a nice cool explosion around you. It's going to do damage to everyone. It's necrotic. It's very kind of what's it called? Thematic for what we're doing here. So we're going to stick with that. We're going to go ahead and progress forward. And this is going to bring us into level 4, where we get to select our spell of Hex. There we go. Now, Hex is really nice because this is going to basically give a disadvantage on any ability of your choosing. So you're hitting something or attacking something that's a really, really strong, maybe the boss to a certain act, and that act is, oh, this character is really good with its strength. You Hex its strength, and it's now going to have a disadvantage on all of its melee attack. Or you know what? It's a caster, and it's specifically using intelligence. We're going to Hex that intelligence, and it's going to remove its ability to really reliably cast. Just keep in mind, Hex is a concentration ability, and you're going to have a ton of concentration abilities as a Paladin, as well as a Warlock when we get into what's it called? Now, we'll see it in a bit. It's a really cool ability. Now, as far as your Eldritch Invocations, we're definitely going to be going with Agonizing Blast. When you cast Eldritch Blast, add your Charisma modifier to the damage it deals. Now, of course, we're going to be using just tons of Charisma, so we do want that on. Now, Repelling Blast is also one I really like here, because this allows you to manipulate the battlefield. You can push things around, knock them into stuff, knock them over a precipice, whatever you so wish. You have Disguise Self if you want to take advantage of any of the items that say, hey, have to be a specific race. You cast Disguise Self on yourself, make yourself that race, and then even if you go to sleep and come back to whatever race you were, as long as you don't unequip the item, you don't have to recast Disguise Self. That's kind of really nice, right? Where's the other one I was looking for? For the most part, it's pretty much... You could go with something like Fiendish Vigor if you want, but Repelling Blast, I think, is probably just the safest, best one to go here at the beginning. And we're going to push ourselves here up to Warlock level 3, where we'll choose more spells. Darkness is a really good one that you can take advantage of. Shatter is really nice just to kind of give yourself some ability. I really love Misty Step, but there are so many items in the game that give you Misty Step, so you don't really need to rely on this one if you don't want to. Ray of Enfeeblement kind of fits into the role of a Death Knight using your Necromancy capabilities, so if you'd like to go with that, you definitely can, just to kind of point out some pretty good ones. Hold Person's always nice. I just don't really like it because it is a concentration spell, and you're already kind of jammed up for strong concentration spells. I would probably go with something like a Shatter, a Ray of Enfeeblement, even like Cloak of Daggers, or a reaction spell like Hellish Rebuke. So if someone hits you, you get to do damage back to them immediately. And I really like those capabilities. It does, of course, take up a spell slot. Now for our Pact Boon, we're definitely going Pact of the Blade here. Now this is probably a no-brainer because we're doing a melee class, but Pact of the Blade here is, it uses the wielder's spell casting modifier, and its damage is magical, and you're proficient with the weapon. We're a Paladin, so we're proficient with all weapons, but still, this is the big focus here because we have some items that can queue off of this, and this is what is going to give us an extra attack in this build. Let's go ahead and accept this and push into our level 4 Warlock, where we will now have our choice of feat. So let's have a discussion about feats. With this build, you kind of have to think of something. You are not going to have access to any more than 2 feats, because we're going to a max level of 5 Warlock or Paladin and a max level of 7 Paladin or Warlock. We're not going to be able to get a 3rd feat. So when you're looking at this, keep that in mind. So I'm going to take a look at something like Heavy Armor Master, which is probably one of my favorite perks, or I'm sorry, feat. This isn't Fallout. Feats for when I am taking heavy armor. It just makes me a veritable dreadnought. I've got so much tank ability with just this perk alone, and this would be one that would enable me to take 15 strength at the start, so that at this point I would have 16 strength. What you can also do is you can just start with 14 strength and have 12 dex, and then when you finally get to a point where you want to do this, just respec your character and swap it around so you'd have 16 strength. So you can get kind of gamey with that if you so wish. But Heavy Armor Master is one I would almost always take because we're going with heavy armor in this build. Now, if I was going with a Great Weapon Master is very good because of the ability to crit hit on a target or kill it, and then make a bonus action attack right after. So that's very nice. Your character is a little jammed up in its bonus action capabilities because you can use Hex as a bonus action or Misty Step as a bonus action. So just kind of be mindful of that when you're taking Great Weapon Master. You might not end up actually using this bonus action as much. The big benefit here is to be able to do 10 more damage at the cost of a -5 to attack roll, which you can toggle on and off. That is a really great one. Lucky is always good. Mage Slayer is great for just trying to crack open someone's concentration if it's an enemy. I do like Athlete because you can get a strength or dex bonus, but you know, if you're prone, you can get up pretty quickly. Ability improvement is always a good one, right? Like, this is just kind of the one that everyone likes. Like if you decided not to do anything with the Hag and you had 15 strength here, you could put a point into strength and a point into to charisma, and you'd have both of those at an even number if you had done that at the onset of your character creation. Another big one here is Savage Attacker. When making melee weapon attacks, you roll your damage dice twice and use the highest result. Basically, you get an advantage on your damage dice. If you went with Sword and Board, go with Shield Master here. It's really nice because it's going to help to reduce the damage you take from spells that force you to do dex saving throws. Always lovely. But another really good one as well is Warcaster. You gain advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on a spell, and you will be casting spells with concentration throughout the entirety of the game as both a Warlock and a Paladin. And also you can use a reaction to cast Shocking Grasp. That's neither here nor there. It's really the advantage to saving throws is really cool because I'd rather not use Shocking Grasp as much here. You can use reaction to cast saving target moving out of melee range. I'd rather just use my weapon, to be honest, because I'm a melee character. So go with what makes sense for you. I'm going to just choose Heavy Armor Master for this character in this video here right now. There we go. And then I'm also going to go to our spells here, where I'll choose Darkness because it's always good to blind a whole blanket of things. And cantrips, we can go with whatever. You know, Friendship is really good, or Friends, if you don't already have this, is always really good. If you want to stick really heavily with the Death Knight capabilities or Death Knight theme, go with Bone Chill. It's just a really cool one. It's Necromancy, does your necrotic damage, and they have undead targets receive disadvantage on attack rolls. Always spicy. Now it's time for our final level in Warlock. And this is where we're going to get one of my favorite spells for Warlock, and it is Hunger of Hadar. So creatures within this black sphere are blinded and take damage at the end of their turn and at the start of their turn. Creatures starting their turn in the area take 12 cold damage, and creatures ending their turn take acid damage. Keep wanting to say area. But yeah, they take acid damage, and it's difficult terrain, so they move super slow. It is a concentration ability, so keep that in mind, but it's just so strong. It's such a great way to just lock down everything around you. It's one of my favorite abilities. You can also, though, go with Flight, so you can have your character fly around. That's also badass, and Counterspell is very good as well. So keep in mind with a Warlock, you cannot swap these abilities out at whim. You have to respec your character to push yourself from maybe Hunger of Hadar into Counterspell. So maybe you do go ahead and swap those things out as you get further into the game. You're like, you know what? Hunger of Hadar, its usefulness is just not as strong to me anymore. I'd rather have Counterspell. Go ahead and respec. It costs you 100 gold. Go do it real quickly. But another one that I want to point out, just because we are playing a Death Knight build, is Vampiric Touch. Very nice here. Touch an enemy to siphon their life force and regain half as many hit points. For 10 turns, you can use Vampiric Touch again without expending an additional spell slot. So it has a really cool kind of exploding effect, and there are a lot of abilities or armor pieces that'll say, hey, if you did something, cast a spell in melee, get X, Y, and Z benefit. So this can really trigger a lot of fun stuff. And lastly, we have our final Eldritch Invocations. And these have things like Bestow Curse, and now you can cast Slow with a Warlock spell slot. So just again, go with whatever here kind of fits. The big ones were Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast. But you can go here with, Thief of Five Fates. Once per long rest, you can cast Bane using a Warlock spell slot. Bane targets up to 3 characters. It's not as crazy or as great, but I'll just go with Mask of Many Faces so I can play around with some of the items that say, hey, this is locked only for Githyanki or whatever it is. Now we push on. We're into Paladin level 3, and we're going to choose some spells here. I'm going to go ahead and swap off some of these all real quick to just kind of go through all of them. Searing Smite is great, and so is Branding Smite. It just depends on if you chose playing as a tiefling or not. If you did, just use your cantrip versions of it. Bless is always a great one to have. Keep in mind, though, it is a concentration capability. Using stuff like Thunderous Smite is cool because it's a bonus action, and it is and a primary action, but it is not a concentration ability. Whereas some of these, like Searing Smite, are concentration abilities. So keep those things in mind. Protection from good and evil is always really good because this is going to give you... target can't be charmed, frightened, or possessed by the elementals, celestials, fays, fiends, and undead. Aberrations as well, and you're going to deal with all of those in spades. Shield of Faith is nice. It's a concentration ability yet again, but it does give you a nice flat increase to your armor class by 2. Very fun, very good. Command can be really good if you don't already have a cleric that can use it, or any of the other characters that would. Divine Favor is whatever. Wrathful Smite is what is another fun one that can also cause fear, and fear is something that we can use a lot in this build. And I'm going to go through the Oathbreaker abilities towards the end of this, but I just want to push us through it up to level 5 Paladin. So here we're going to get more Lay on Hands charges, and we're going to choose a new feat. I'm going to go ahead and choose Great Weapon Master just because of the character I've created in this video, but we've already gone over this section before. Lastly, we have level 5 Paladin, which gives us our final extra attack. So what we got here, what we got with Warlock level 5, that I did not go over because I'm dumb. It should be over here in this portion. Is it this? Yeah, where is it? Aha, Deepened Pack. So at level 5 Warlock, we get this. So Blade Pack holders gain an extra attack with their weapon. This Deepened Pack capability is going to stack with this extra attack capability of Warlock. Or, I'm sorry, of Paladin. So when we swing our sword, we get to get 3 attacks per 1 action of doing melee attack. 1 for the primary action, 2 for the extra attack, 3 for the Deepened Pack extra attack. It is disgusting. It's why this build is all over YouTube, is being able to take advantage of both of these things. And then for our spells, we get Oath spells of Lesser Restoration and Silence, but ignore that because we're going to get new ones in a little bit. But for our level 2 spells, I'm going to drop Heroism here and Divine Favor. We can get Magic Weapon, which I actually really like. I think it's very kind of normal, but very fun. The weapon becomes magical, receiving +1 bonus attack and damage rolls. It's just a vanilla way to buff up your weapon. Branding Smite, if you did not choose Tiefling, this is really nice because things can't become invisible, and it's quite a bit more radiant damage than on top of the radiant damage you are already going to do. Again, keep in mind, it's a concentration capability. And lastly, I do really like Protection from Poison because it lasts until long rest, gains advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, resistance to poison's damage. That's always just kind of nice if you know you're going to come to a lot of poison BS in the game. So this is where we kind of have a bit of a bifurcation between choosing between Paladin or Warlock. So let's talk about that right now. Choosing to go to level 7 Paladin is what I'm going to do for this video. It's because I want my Paladin to get the Aura of Hate from Oathbreaker, which enables us to get our Charisma bonus into our damage. That's what I want to do. Now that's because I'm choosing a melee-centric Death Knight build. You can choose a casting-centric Death Knight build, or at least a build that pulls more out of the Warlock capabilities by going 1 more level here into Warlock, which is going to give us Entropic Ward, which is actually a melee capability. As a reaction, you can impose disadvantage on an attack roll against you. If the attack misses, you gain advantage on your next attack roll against your attacker for 1 turn. That's actually really sick, especially with the amount of attacks that come out of us. That can be a disgusting amount of attacks. You pop a Potion of Heroism, and you have advantage on 6 attacks to the face, not counting for as many of the ones that you're going to use Divine Smite on. So it's a really, really great ability. Don't sleep on it. But the big reason I'm pushing Warlock to level 7 is that our Warlock spells go from level 3 to level 4. And keep in mind, too, Warlock spell slots replenish on a short rest. So if you do want to go with more of a casting Warlocky type of Death Knight, just push your Warlock on up to level 7. But me personally, I'm going to be going to level 7 with our Paladin. For level 6 here, this would give us Aura of Protection. So we're going to push 1 more level up here into level 7. Now, I'm going to go break the character, and I'm going to show you what happens once we actually take this character and put him into Oathbreaker. So once we transition to Oathbreaker, you can see what happens. We get access to Spiteful Suffering. The big thing here is Control Dead. We'll be using this quite a bit, as well as Dreadful Aspect. So with Control Dead, what you need to know is when you choose this ability at level 2 even, you know, if you go Oath of Devotion, break your oath very early in the game, it's super easy. You get access to Control Undead. And Control Undead, it says here, until long rest. So the Undead unit, once you long rest, you can just simply rein it back into Control Undead. It does have to be, I believe it has to be your level or lower. No, the target's level must be lower than yours. So basically you can have a pet undead that you bring along with you throughout the majority of the game. It might die, it might not. Unfortunately, Control Undead is the only way we can take advantage of the Aura of Hate that we don't have active right now because I'm not level 12. But it's worth noting still that once you get into Act 3, you can take advantage of some really, really strong undead. There are undead all throughout the majority of Act 2. You'll encounter undead in the very beginning of Act 1 when you go to Wither's Tomb. So there's always ways you can get access to them, but unfortunately we cannot summon them reliably with this build to get bonuses from Aura of Hate. There's plenty of other ways we can summon them, and I'll show you with some equipment, but just to kind of illustrate why we've selected Control Undead as our primary source of undead and how we're buffing them. In through there, Hellish Rebuke. So if you chose this as a Warlock spell, you don't need it because you have it as an Oath spell, but I did want to say it is a really good Warlock spell nonetheless. Inflict Wounds into Crown of Madness and into Darkness. Again, we already have this spell because of our Warlock capabilities, so don't select it if you decide to 100% go with Warlock. Just keep those things in mind. Then at level 7, we would have Aura of Hate here, but because I've just been going through the game as slow as humanly possible, I don't have access to a level 12 character because I'm the worst content creator of all time. But you would see Aura of Hate here, which would increase you and your allies, ally fiends and undead, their charisma. Their attack damage by your charisma modifier. So ours is +3. It would give me +3 damage at all times. And then any fiends that are summoned up through maybe a summon planner ally, any undead that are under that Control Undead, or any kind of friendly undead for any reason, would get this bonus to their attack damage. So that is our Oathbreaker and how it spices into the character. Now, as far as the gear goes for this kind of combination, we're going to take a look at the weapons first. And you have a lot of really good weapons that you can take advantage of with this character. I mean, you can go right early in the very beginning of the game and get the Blood of Lathander. That is that legendary mace that we've talked about before. That is a one-handed weapon, not a two-handed weapon, but it's got a lot of really great capabilities. It heals you, it sheds light on things, it uses Sunbeam, it's got a weapon enchantment of +3. Now, of course, too, you can use the Everburn Blade if you get that when you are on the Illithid ship. That's a really, of course, popular one that everyone has nowadays, but that's the reason that's really good is also it does fire damage, and that's always going to be really nice. Getting any kind of additional damage you can on target is strong, and you'll use it throughout the majority of Act 1. Outside of that, though, and another big Act 1 one here is the Faithbreaker. You'll get access to this right during the Goblin Camp, and it's actually a really solid weapon because it's versatile, so you can use it one-handed or two-handed. And this ability, Absolute Power, is pretty disgusting. Does a lot of damage. So it's a nice thing to kind of have if you want to just use something early in Act 1. I do like it. But some of the big standout ones here too. We get Blackguard Sword in Act 3. Dazing Smite. On a hit infused with one of your smites, the target must succeed a Constitution saving throw or become dazed. This is a long sword, so it's one or two-handed, which is lovely. The Falar Eluve is also a long sword, which is one or two-handed. But the melody here is really cool. So you can sing, all allies within 20 feet have a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and charisma, wisdom, and intelligence saving throws. Sick. But Shriek is also amazing. All enemies within 20 feet of range have a 1d4 penalty to charisma, wisdom, and intelligence saving throws. Affected creatures also receive an extra 1 to 4 thunder damage. So it's just free damage on target. It helps out with any kind of spells you or your allies might be casting. It just depends on what you want to do. It's a bonus Oh, no, it's a primary action to turn that bad boy on. And I really, really like it. It's one of my favorite swords. You get it in the Underdark, and I've used it for the majority of the game. But some other cool ones too are Corpse Grinder here if you want to stick with two-handed power mauls that you want to dance around with. Not a power maul, this isn't Warhammer 40,000. But also there's the Halberd of Vigilance, which is one of my favorite weapons too. Gain a bonus to initiative rolls and advantage on a perception ability checks, which is great because perception is annoying. And Adroit Reflexes here, when you make an attack roll as a reaction, you make it with advantage. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that using a halberd. So lovely here. Lastly, though, the big one that I'm using right now is the Charge Bound Warhammer. This is a really cool weapon that's meant for either an Eldritch Knight or a Warlock because of the packed weapon capability. So packed weapon, as we know, it's going to convert the damage that it does. I'm sorry, not the damage, but the proficiency that it uses. Or, I'm sorry, the modifier that it's got. Good lord, I go through every single possible thing here. Into charisma rather than strength or dexterity, depending on the item. So Chargebound Warhammer, we've packed it. So now it gets that additional +1 weapon enchantment, which is sick. It turns on this. This weapon deals an additional 1 to 6 lightning damage, and this weapon has a +1 bonus to attack damage and attack rolls. Because these magical powers only kick in if you've packed bladed it. So this thing actually turns into, it says 7 to 21, but try not to look at those numbers when you look at these items. Look down here. 17 to 31 damage with some lightning damage coming out of this. And then we can just use Divine Smites and have a whole hell of a lot of fun because it's added into that Divine Smite. So you can see how that's a lot of fun. There is an additional piece of equipment that I'll be talking about, but it's a spoiler, so I'm going to save it for the end of this equipment section. So if you want to skip over that, you can. So just hang tight. We got one more sword to go into. For our armor, let's have some fun. We have Reaper's Embrace. This is one that we're going to get at the end of Act 2. All incoming damage reduced by 2. It's got Howl of the Dead. It's just very thematic more than anything. I don't think it's an amazing, the world's best heavy armor, but it's really, really, really good. And it looks cool as hell. And it's very Death Knight-y, right? Let out a bone-chilling howl that numbs all nearby creatures. And numb's pretty cool here. Movement speed halved. The spellcaster has advantage on attack rolls against the affected entity as well, and removed by help or when hit by spellcaster. But I like it a lot. Also, you can't be moved against your will by any spell or actions, but have a disadvantage on dexterity saving throws if you activate it. So you do have to deal with that. It just is too cool to pass up. As far as some of the other items I'm wearing here, we have Gloves of Heroism. You'll get in Act 1 when you use your Channel Oath spells. Remember that's going to be these. You gain heroism. So just a free heroism here. And you can't be frightened and receive 5 temp hit points per turn. You cannot have more than one source of temp hit points. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're not going to stack a whole bunch of things. But this is something you get at the very beginning of the game. And it's a nice kind of turn on to give you some early cheap temp hit points. And also strength saving throws +1 because your strength can be lower if you want in this case. Helmet of Smiting. When you apply a condition with one of your smite spells, you gain temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier. Again, only one source of temp hit points. I'm just showcasing all of them. You wouldn't have all of them on at once. And 2, remember, strength is not your primary focus. It's charisma. You have your strength here just to kind of, if you need to fall back on it or whatever needs to happen for strength rolls or whatever, it's there. But your primary damage comes out of your charisma and your charisma modifier, and that's where you get a nice benefit here, is that you're getting that charisma modifier as temp hit points, and constitution saving throws are increased by 1. So any concentration rolls you make. The Vivacious Cloak here is another source of temp hit points. You gain 7 temp hit points after casting a spell while in melee. So I would say between like the 3 of these items, choose one, stick with it, and roll with it. You could probably keep this cloak on for the majority of the game if you wanted. A lot of these you're going to get in the early portion of the game, and they will fall out of usefulness. Just trying to showcase them. I like the Blackguard's Greave, which you get in Act 3 as well, because this gains, you get Long Strider on your character. So if you're not a ranger or not have access to Long Strider, it's nice just to have it, because Long Strider gives you an extra 10 feet of movement, and athletics is +1. So it helps with all those shove rolls that you're doing. For some other items too, we have Amulet of the Harpers, which just gives us advantage on wisdom saving throws, as well as Shield, which is a reaction, so just a free AC for any kind of particularly hard hit. Killer's Sweetheart is an absolute must. When you kill a creature, your next attack roll will be a crit hit. Once spent, this effect refreshes after a long rest. This is a reaction, as you can see down here, so you don't have to use it, but it's a nice way to just all right, I'm going to turn on a crit hit, which is going to lead to a Divine Smite, which can lead to any number of crit hit responses from either being a level 7 Warlock or any number of other things from our gear we're about to go into. For other armor pieces, though, we have the Blackguard's Plate from Act 3, advantage on Wisdom saving throw check, and it's super thematic, right? Like this is what they Blackguard, probably not Blackguard, Blackguard. This is probably what they expect everyone who's an Oathbreaker to use. We also have the Adamantine Scale Mail, but think of this as the heavy armor version, which would increase your incoming reduce your incoming damage by 2 rather than 1. And when a melee attack hits you, they're reeled for 3 turns rather than 2. Also, I think you have 18 armor class, and attackers can't land crit hits on the wearer. Get this at the end of Act 1, so it's quite good, quite early. As far as helmets go, we have the Flayed Helldusk helmet, one of my favorites. It's just a really solid one. Constitution saving throws and helps out with those saving throws against spells by +2. Really easy to get in Act 2. Had to think about that. Circle of Bones, though, is quite good. And I really, really like it. Just depends on the route you're taking. It maybe makes more sense for that Necromancer I was talking about. But allied undead within 20 feet are resistant to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. So this does actually affect your control undead, so you can use this and it will actually help them out. And it gives you a source of animate dead. So we put this on, and we have animate dead into our repertoire, which is lovely. We can just kind of have that turned on if we so wish. I put Birthright here because it's a free source of charisma. It gives us +2 charisma. So if you don't, you get this in Act 3. So if you're really like, I just don't really have a good helmet I want to stick with, just pop on a sweet ass pimp hat, and you have a +2 to your charisma. So it's a really nice way to just get a lot of charisma. Another cape here is really good as the Cloak of Elemental Absorption. Absorb elemental damage once per short rest, which is lovely. Take half damage from the next elemental attack targeting you and deal an additional 1d6 of that element type. So it's a lot of wombo combos that can be done with that one. You have a lot of gloves at your disposal too, depending on which ones you want to stick with. You get the Blackguard's gauntlets, strength saving throws, attack +1, that's damage. You're going to get an extra attack here. Also inflict wounds if you want to use that. Legacy of the Masters is great because you gain a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with with weapons, and a strength saving throw +1. It's probably the best like kind of end game gear when it comes to just straight up melee damage. Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power. When a weapon attack roll inflicts a condition, you kind of do this, right? Inflicts a condition, and you have this, inflicts a condition. You kind of have those guys go together. But you get Arcane Acuity, which then does this. Bonus to attack rolls and spell difficulty class per turn remaining. You're going to be doing tons of those in spades. Another really cool one here is Luminous Gloves. When the wearer deals radiant damage, which your smites will do, the target receives one turn of Radiating Orb, which means that they then have -1 to their attack rolls. So it can be good against a lot of melee targets. Lastly, you have Cerebral Citadel Gloves. Charm or frighten a creature to gain a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws. So you have lots of sources for frighten, so take advantage of it. This can help basically give you a free bless, which is lovely, and a strength saving throw. Now, as far as shields go, if you want to stick on the shield route, you can get with the Adamantine Shield very early in the game. Just nice to kind of, it's very good from a defensive standpoint. The Shield of the Undevout. Your foes have disadvantage on saving throws to resist your spells or actions that inflict fear. Remember, your crit strikes inflict fear. Do we have the thingy that shows the thingy? Where's that thingy that I'm talking about when I say the word thingy? Aha! Where is it? Mortal Reminder. When you land a crit hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby enemies must succeed a wisdom saving throw or become frightened. So this will wombo combo with it, right? So they now have disadvantage on that saving throw to resist your spells or actions that inflict fear, which you can help out with this, which has been going to give you basically a free bless. So there's just a lot of really cool ways you can take that frightened capability and really have a lot of fun with it. As far as some really cool other rings and equipment you can go with is Ring of the Exalted Marrow. It just fits the overall shtick of what we're going with. Subjugate the undead with your commands and Ghoulish Touch. It's just kind of fits the Death Knight. I'm not saying it's like, oh, this is really good. Just think it's cool. Fits very thematic if you want to stick with more of an RP route. And if you want to really min-maxi on your neck piece, you can go with Spell Slot Restoration from the Spellcrux Amulet. This is just going to allow you to turn all those spell slots back on. Lastly, we have the Disintegrating Night Stalkers, which just gives you Misty Step as well as cannot be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared. And one last item I do want to showcase before we go forward is the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. I actually don't have it. It's from the Mountain Pass. But this synergetic moments, when you inflict a condition, gain Arcane Synergy for 2 rounds. Arcane Synergy enables you to add your spellcasting modifier to your weapon damage roll. It further compounds the amount of damage you can do with your smites by just adding way more charisma damage onto targets. It's really, really, really good, but it does take up a helmet slot. There is a ring counterpart to this, which does the same thing if you do damage with cantrips. So if you do any kind of Eldritch Blast or anything like that, that will work just as well. It just kind of keep in mind, you just have to deal damage with a cantrip first, and then you get the Arcane Synergy, but it does last for 2 turns. Let's jump over to our last 2 items, which are spoiler items. Do not go ahead if you do not want to be spoiled about something that happens in Act 3. If you jumped ahead to this point and you don't know it, it's a spoiler. Stop now if you have not gotten to this point in Act 3, or maybe if you haven't completed the game. Just be careful, you might learn something you didn't want to learn. Let's look at it now. It's this helmet. It's my favorite thing. I didn't know this was in the game, but when I saw it, I got really giddy. So it's Saravok's Horn Helm. You gain dark vision up to 10 feet. The number you need to roll a crit hit while attacking is reduced by 1. That's the biggest thing that we want here, because it helps trigger our crit hits even more. You can't be frightened and cannot be afflicted with other emotion altering conditions, and you get a Constitution saving throw +1. It's probably the coolest damn helmet in the game too. And this Sword of Chaos is really good. You are going to have to definitely, of course, pack blade this, right? So right now it says 7 to 20. We'll pack blade it. Now it does 8 to 21. So there you go. It's going to be Chaos on hit, regain 1 to 6 hit points. It's just a nice ability because it has a lot of things to do here, as well as lacerate, cleave, rush attack, pommel strike. It's got it all. And it's also our packed weapon now too, so we're getting the benefit here of our charisma into this bad boy. Here we can be real cheesy and put the birthright on. And it gives us a little bit more damage, but it's one of my favorite weapons too. I just a huge ode to Baldur's Gate 1, so I absolutely love it. But those are all of our items. Let's jump into some combat. So before we jump into combat, let's take a look at stuff what we're going to do ahead of time. We're definitely going to cast Aura of Protection, right? That's going to give us a little bit of bonus. Even though we are an Oathbreaker, remember, Aura of Protection is part of the base Paladin kit. Into that too, we have got Armor of Agathis. So I can go ahead and just press it level 1 and just give me 5 and 5. We can use our spell slot from our Warlock to get this up to 15 and 15. Let's go ahead and do that. That makes it even better here. So we have other things that we can do too. We can go ahead and use like Magic Weapon, which I can use a Warlock spell slot to do. Casting the spell using a 4th or 5th level spell slot will increase the bonus by 2 and 6 and so on and so forth. So the reason I'm using a Warlock spell slot is because you need to look at your normal spell slots as a currency for your Divine Smite. So we just cast these 2 things, and now we can just simply go short rest. And we get all of our Warlock spell slots back online. So just kind of be clever about the way that you're casting spells. Don't just simply use any spell slot that you can find. Typically too, before we'd even jump into this fight, we'd want to go find an undead to control. That would be a big focus of this class, of course. I don't have any on demand to go and find. Or conversely, if you have a corpse around, you can use Animate Dead. If you have say this spell circlet on your headpiece, right? Or if you had gone to 7 in your Paladin, you would have the Animate Dead spell. Oh no, that's level 9. That's level 9. I lied to you. You would not have Animate Dead if you went 7. But this kind of setting up some stuff here just so that you kind of know what you should have before even jumping into combat. I lied. I found an undead on command in at the Basilisk Gate to control. So you can see I made Strange Beggar Lumbar under my control, and he benefits from my Aura of Protection, and he would be benefiting from my Aura of Hate. He has Undead Ward, though, and that is because of that helmet I talked about, right? This little circlet right here. Undead Ward, allied undead within 20 feet are resistant to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. So now he's taking half of all that. So this allows you to really keep your undead up close and personal, doing even more fun stuff in the sun. And is this on Ask? I'm gonna make sure my Divine Smites are on Ask. You always want to make sure these bad boys are on Ask so that they are doing all that fun stuff. So it's basically you're telling the game to ask you to, when you do a crit hit, if you want to use the Divine Smite. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and attack as normal so that you can really maximize your crit hits. That's the kind of big point here, right? So I'm actually going to turn off this right here, which allows us to do more damage, just so I can have a higher chance of actually hitting for the sake of the video. I'd probably keep it on. But we have a lot of things that we can do now as a Death Knight. I can just explode right now and do damage to everyone around me and have them all take necrotic damage. And we can juice this thing up with a spell slot for our Warlock if we so want. So we can have us do 4 to 24 damage. We can have all this different kind of fun. We can go ahead and use Blade Ward here. What's another fun one I was trying to bring up earlier? We do still have Hunger of Hadar, which I wouldn't use in this case, right? We're up close and personal, but I would be casting it over here to kind of create, like let's say that there's a bunch of enemies over here, cast it over on them, something that's kind of range, a spellcaster, whatever it is. You'd use that to kind of lock them down, keep them in one spot, so a little bit more manageable and easier to deal with. But the big thing here is our currency, which is our spell slots, which Divine Smite's going to take advantage of. So let's go ahead and bring up this, and let's type in swiftness, or I'm sorry, speed. There it is. Just have one of these going. That way, we can, if we fail here, we can just kind of keep going to show off how Divine Smite's going to ultimately work for us. Let's go ahead and hit. Okay, we'll use Executioner to trigger that crit hit. Well, that didn't work how I wanted it to. That didn't crit hit. Go ahead and use it again. We'll critically miss, of course, because that's the way you make a video. And now, here's the coolest thing about being a Blade Lock. We can take this, or whatever this is, the Lockadin. We can do this. Boom. Okay, 3 to 24. Or we do this, 4 to 32, because we're using the Warlock spell slot, which is a replenishable resource on short rest. I mean, you can replenish other ones on long rest, sure, but let's just go with this. Boom! That is just absolutely juicy. So, we can take a look here. We went ahead and hit them, used Divine Smite on critical hit, and we hit over here for critical hit. So we did both 27 damage and 35 damage, right? Because we do so much more with crits on our Divine Smites as well. We take all that damage and we just go ahead and go absolutely crazy with it. Let's see if we can get a trigger another one over here. No? Again? Maybe not? Swinging for the fences here. Yeah, well, either way, you get the point. And two, if anything really gets in a hard situation, I could have gone ahead and used lay hands on anyone. I've got a lot of utility with this class. Now, because we're R7, we don't really have a lot of Channel Oath capabilities here. Spiteful Suffering I could have used. Dreadful Aspect I could have used if I really wanted to layer in some of those Frightened capabilities. But we really just weren't going with that here today, right? We didn't really focus on it. And if anything's at range, I don't need to use a ranged weapon. I can just simply use my Eldritch Blast. And because our charisma is at 17 in this example, it'd be 18 if you were to play the right way. You would go ahead and actually be able to do 3 damage beams that would do quite a bit of damage. That would be +4 because you'd have your Agonizing Blast, which is adding in your charisma modifier. And this doesn't even show off Aura of Hate, which would give me an additional +3 to all my damage. So hopefully this shows you how this is a really fun Death Knight-y kind of build. We do focus on Controlled Dead more so than summoning the dead, and you definitely can animate them through things, right? I could wait a whole round here and we could summon up this guy, but I think that this is a really fun class, and it's one that's all over YouTube. Everyone's got a different take on this. For the most part, they run the same kind of baseline, but hopefully this gives you a better idea of how to play your Death Knight in Baldur's Gate 3. If you have any suggestions or different ways to approach this class, by all means, let it be known in the comment section below. Let people know if, hey, you know what, I've actually had a lot of luck using medium armor and going with this armor instead of the heavy armor route. Let it be known. Spread as much of that information as you can. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of fun action. But have a good one and take care.